Hagrid doesn't have a wand. Every other wizard in these books has one. Hagrid carries a battered pink umbrella instead, everywhere he goes, and every so often he taps it on something, and magic comes out of it. He's not allowed a wand. He hasn't been since he was 13 years old. This is what really happened to him. Let's start with his parents. Hagrid's father was a wizard, a small man, even by ordinary standards, and somehow this small man ended up with a giantess, a woman called Fridwulfa, one of the last giants left in Britain. They had a son, and when that son was about 3 years old, she walked out and went back to her own kind and never came back. The reason he gives when he finally talks about it is worse than a fight or a betrayal. She just wasn't the maternal sort. It isn't in their natures, he says, like he worked out a long time ago that there was nothing personal in it and no point being angry. That's the first thing that ever happened to Rubeus Hagrid, and he says it very quietly. He doesn't cry about it, and he doesn't pretend she was better than she was. Years later, he sums her up in 6 words. Not a great mother, I'll be honest. For most of his life, he doesn't even know whether she's alive. Might be dead for all I know, he says. Nobody ever told him. His father raised him alone, and that man adored him. By the time Hagrid was 6, he could pick his father up and put him on top of the dresser if the man annoyed him, and his father thought it was the funniest thing in the world. He used to laugh about it. He was proud when his son got into Hogwarts. He didn't get to see much of it. He died just after Hagrid started school. 12 years old, mother gone since he was 3, father dead. Enormous, clumsy, poor, and alone in a castle full of children who all had somewhere to go at Christmas. And there was one boy in that castle who noticed him. Tom Riddle was 2 years above him. Handsome, brilliant, and the favorite of nearly every teacher in the school. He was also, at that exact moment, opening the Chamber of Secrets and letting something out of it to hunt Muggle-born students. People were being petrified. Then a girl died, a girl called Myrtle, and the school was under threat of being closed for good. Riddle couldn't allow that. The school was the only home he had. He needed somebody to blame, and in that same castle was a lonely 13-year-old who kept a giant spider in a cupboard. Because that's what Hagrid did, even then. Aragog was an acromantula, a talking man-eating spider that grows to the size of a small elephant, and Hagrid had hatched him from an egg and kept him hidden in a cupboard, feeding him scraps from the Great Hall. He talked to him. He loved him. Riddle didn't have to invent much. That's what made it work. He laid it out himself years later, and you can hear him enjoying it. It was his word against Hagrid's. On one side, Tom Riddle, poor but brilliant, parentless but so brave, school prefect, model student. On the other, big, blundering Hagrid in trouble every other week, trying to raise werewolf cubs under his bed, sneaking off into the Forbidden Forest to wrestle trolls. And then he adds one line. Even I was surprised at how well the plan worked. He didn't build a case. He just pointed at the boy nobody would defend. He turned him in. Hagrid was expelled. 13 years old, in his 3rd year, thrown out of the only place he had left, and they snapped his wand. It's not a suspension. It's not a black mark. Breaking a wizard's wand means he is finished. No magic, not legally at least, ever again. At 13, before he'd even learned properly how to use it, they took the thing that made him a wizard and broke it in half in front of him. Nobody worked it out, nobody checked. A boy with no family, no money, and giant blood said he hadn't done it. And a brilliant, charming, well-liked older student said he had, and that was the end of it. But one person stood up for him. Dumbledore was a teacher then, not headmaster yet, just the Transfiguration professor, and he didn't believe a word of it. He argued for Hagrid, and he lost. The expulsion stood. So he went back and argued for something smaller instead. If the boy couldn't be a student, let him stay. Give him a job and let him live on the grounds. And that's why Hagrid is the gamekeeper. Not because he wanted to be, because it was the only piece of his life that could be saved. He was 13 years old and he never left those grounds again. Now, the umbrella. When they snapped his wand, Hagrid didn't throw the pieces away. He kept them, both halves, and at some point he hid them inside a battered pink umbrella, and he has carried it ever since. That's what he taps on things. That's the magic he isn't supposed to be doing. He's not supposed to be doing magic at all, and he does it anyway, lighting a fire, tapping his way into Diagon Alley, once giving Dudley a pig's tail. But it doesn't always work. Years later, mid-air over England with a motorbike sidecar breaking away underneath Harry, he points the umbrella at it, and the spell doesn't save it. And there's a moment in the wand shop, the day he takes Harry to buy his first wand, that tells you everything. Ollivander asks whether they really did snap his wand when he was expelled. Hagrid says yes, they did, but he's still got the pieces. He swears he doesn't use them, and while he says it, Harry notices that he's gripping the pink umbrella very tightly. He was expelled at 13 for something he didn't do, and for the next 50 years, he walked around with the broken pieces of his wand hidden in his hand. He never accepted it. He never got over it. And nobody cleared his name. The story followed him for half a century. The great oaf who let something loose in the school and got a girl killed. Then, 50 years later, it happened again. The chamber opened, students started turning to stone, and the ministry needed to look like they were doing something. So they came for Hagrid. No evidence, no trial, nothing new at all. Just an old accusation and a man who was easy to arrest. And the Minister for Magic said it out loud, standing in Hagrid's own hut. He was under a lot of pressure. He had to be seen to be doing something. If it turned out it wasn't Hagrid, he'd be back and no more said. They sent him to Azkaban, to the Dementors. He hadn't done anything, and everyone involved more or less knew it, and they did it anyway. He was released when the truth came out, because Harry went down into that chamber and found what was actually living there. That's what it took. 50 years, and in the end, it wasn't the ministry, or the courts, or any adult in that world who cleared him. It was Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And by then he was in his 60s. He never got to go back and finish. He never got his education or his wand back. There's one more thing he lost, and he went looking for it. Years later, in the Second War, Dumbledore sent him on a mission to the Giants. To reach them before Voldemort did, he traveled for weeks into the mountains to find the last colony left. And while he was there, he asked about his mother. She was dead. She had died some time before, and nobody had told him, and there was nothing to go and see. But he found something else. In that colony there was a giant everyone picked on, undersized, bullied by the others, not big enough to be one of them. His name was Grawp, and he was Hagrid's little brother. So Hagrid did the only thing he was ever going to do. He brought him home. He smuggled a 16-foot giant across a continent, hid him in the Forbidden Forest, and started trying to teach him English. It was dangerous. It was ridiculous. Grawp uprooted trees and threw them, and didn't understand a word for a long time, and hurt him more than once. He kept going anyway. The boy his own mother walked away from found a brother nobody else wanted, and refused to do the same thing to him. There was one more thing he never let go of. Aragog was still alive. The spider he'd been expelled over, the reason his wand was in pieces, living out in the Forbidden Forest with a colony of his own. And Hagrid went out there to visit him. For decades, he never blamed him, not once. The creature that had cost him everything got looked after until the end. And when Aragog died, he sat down beside his grave and wept for him like family. Once you notice it, he does it with everything. The dragon he raised in his wooden hut, the three-headed dog, the hippogriff he fought for right up to the day they came to kill it, the thestrals the rest of the world called an omen of bad luck, the brother nobody else wanted. He was called a monster his entire life. Half-breed, oaf, giant blood, dangerous. People said it in front of him and about him, and he heard all of it. So he dedicated his life on the things everyone else was frightened of. And on one night in particular, somebody noticed. When Harry Potter's parents were killed, Dumbledore had to choose someone to go into that ruined house, lift the baby out of it, and carry him across the country. He could have sent anyone. He sent the man the wizarding world had spent 50 years calling dangerous, thrown out of school, not to be trusted. He handed him the most important child alive and never worried about it for a second. He'd said it plainly enough once. He would trust Hagrid with his life. So picture that night, a giant of a man on a flying motorbike, one arm around a baby who has just lost everything. In the other hand, a battered pink umbrella with a broken wand hidden inside it. Everything they took from him, and everything they trusted him with, carried in the same pair of hands. 50 years earlier, he'd been a 13-year-old with nothing left. No wand, no future, nobody who believed a word he said. One man looked at him anyway, and decided he was worth keeping. Hagrid spent the rest of his life doing exactly that for everything else, and especially for the baby on the doorstep who didn't have anyone either, because he knew what that felt like.